time ago.
We don't have to worry until that goes away.
Couple seconds.
Yeah.
Here we come.
Right.
Either way.
Oh, jeez, look who's here.
Welcome, everybody, to the regularly stated meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. This is the meeting for Thursday, November 16th, 2023. This is to formally advise that as required by General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 enacted relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on June 16, 2021, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, the Yarmouth Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting in the Town of Yarmouth Hearing Room at 5 p.m. on November 16th. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided on the notice of meeting available on the Town of Yarmouth website. And this is the meeting for Yarmouth Conservation Commission, November 16th, 2023. Before I get into the agenda, I would just like to mention for those of you who are long-term followers of the Conservation Commission, which I'm sure there's a lot of people.
There are lots.
There are. I would just like to show you that we are finally back up to a full board of 7 members. We'd like to welcome Mr. Jack Frost to the commission, and we're looking forward to working with him for years and years. So with that, we'll move into our first order of business, which is a request for determination of applicability. This is Paul Schaefer, Anthony Russo, 63 Cleveland Way, proposed addition and deck and land subject to coastal storm flowage and the buffer zone to a bordering vegetative wetland.
Good evening. It's Paul Shea with Independent Environmental Consultants. I'm representing Mr. Russo. This proposed project, he would like to build a small family room attached to the house on the south side of the house, where there's an existing wooden deck now. Small family room and a small deck attached to it. There is a bordering vegetated wetland located on the opposite side of Cleveland Way, on the other side of the road. If you look, basically, this project, we're completely outside the 50-foot buffer zone, and we're basically only a corner of it is going to be within a section of the 100-foot buffer zone. There is a flood zone on the property, FEMA flood zone AE elevation 11, and that would be really in the northern section of the property where we're going to be doing the work. We're actually above the flood zone, so there'll be no alterations to the flood zone. So happy to answer any questions. Again, we're not altering the 50, and we're just doing a really minor amount of work within the 100-foot buffer zone that's already been altered in the past.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Questions from the commission?
No.
Brittany?
No.
Anybody in the audience have any questions or comments on this project? Anybody on Zoom, raise your hand digitally. Seeing none, then unless there's further discussion among the board, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2 and a -3?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Paul. Next order of business is a request for an extension for SE 83-2258 8 Grove Street, the raise and replacement of a single-family dwelling with associated deck and impervious driveway, in-ground pool and surrounding patio. This permit expires in June of 2024, and there has been no work that has begun as of this moment. Kieran.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members. For the record, we are looking to request a 3-year extension on this order of conditions. It was issued some years back. The reason for it is that there were 2 houses side by side on this property, on 2 different properties, but they were side by side. The focus was getting on the other one finished first before this one got started, and the other one is almost at the point of requesting certificate of compliance. But as a result of putting all the focus on the first one, The second one hasn't started yet. We do hope to start it shortly, but we're looking for a 3-year extension to take the time to get this covered.
Great, thanks. Any questions from the board? Brittany?
No questions.
All right, if that's the case, then would somebody like to make a motion to approve the extension for 3 years?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
You said that? Was that Paul?
Oh.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
All right.
He's jumping right in.
That's right, it's like, he's making the rest of you look shameful there.
Take much?
That's right. All right, all
Speak for
those in
yourself.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Remember, that's 7-0, not 6-0.
All right, next order of business is a notice of intent for SED 3-2404, Michael Toohill, Kaneko Engineers and Scientists Incorporated for Scott Gilmore, Town of Yarmouth, 62 High Bank Road, proposed golf cart bridge within the riverfront area, land subject to coastal storm flowage, coastal bank, and the buffer zone to a salt marsh.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Mike Toohill with Conoco Engineers and Scientists. We're here on behalf of the town to replace a bridge that had existed in this location for decades and was damaged in 2016 and then taken down in 2017. Brittany, if we could pull up the pictures first, that would be great, especially the first ones that were in that letter that I wrote to you recently.
Okay.
The 2 aerials.
Great.
There you go. So there's a picture of the bridge in 2016, October 2016, right before it was damaged. And as you scroll down, there it is in 2017 in the spring where it was taken out. And you can see on either side of the bridge, in the first picture, is the approach from the T, which is down kind of towards the bottom of the picture. And it goes across this stream that comes through a culvert. There's a fairway just upstream from here, and it goes through that culvert, and it comes down here and joins the Bass River, and that's the Bass River that we're looking at down in the lower left of the picture. And so on the T side, there's a bituminous concrete path that goes down to where the end of the bridge was, and on the green side, there was a seashell and gravel path that picked up from the end of the bridge, and that's what's shown in that second picture down there. And what we're talking about doing here is replacing the bridge in that same location, and we can, if you want to pull the plans up, we can start to look at those. We're talking about replacing the bridge in the same location and picking up from that bituminous path on the one side to the seashell path on the other side and putting the bridge back exactly where it was. The new bridge is proposed to be a little longer than the old bridge, a little bit taller to give a little more clearance under it, and a little wider. But this is a golf cart and pedestrian bridge for the golfers coming down from the tee to the green. Right now, what they have to do is they come down this path. There's a path in the very lower part of the picture there that Brittany has up. There's a path that kind of goes off. There you go. That's right above the 100 riverfront area label. There's a path that goes along through the woods, and then it comes out onto the fairway at a golf hole, and that's where this stream is in a culvert. And so what the golfers, whether they're walking or in a cart, have to do is come down the path, go along this path through the woods, and then come out onto the fairway before turning back again onto the other side of the stream and coming back up the path that joins at the top of the picture and joins back up towards the green. See that path up top, the gravel cart path. So they have to make this long, circuitous route around, and that's one issue. The second issue is a safety issue, because the fairway that they're coming into is they're right in the line of the tee shot for the people that are playing that golf hole. And so they come out of the woods onto a fairway that's active. And so as a public safety issue and a pace of play issue, we'd like to put this bridge back in the same location. We have lots of details in the plans about the bridge itself, but that's kind of the long and the short of the story. This is all previously developed, previously disturbed riverfront area, because there's no soil in the path up there, and there's no soil, obviously, in the bituminous car path. We're staying up out of the salt marsh. I delineated the salt marsh out there. There's a picture of the bridge coming in, so it's picking up from the bituminous where the little cartoon figure is, the person. That's where the bituminous path is, coming across that creek and then joining with the seashell path on the other side, which we may change out to a gravel path instead of seashells, but it's all kind of semi-pervious material. We'd be able to eliminate some of that long loop path that goes around, which is in riverfront on both sides. And we'd be able to eliminate that path that joins up to the cart path up near the green, which again is in riverfront. Everything in this project is in the riverfront area. This little stream is a perennial stream, as shown on the USGS map. Coastal Bank is up by the green and up by the T, so everything down below is in Coastal Bank. It is land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's elevation 12 on the downstream end and 11 on the upstream end, because the bridge itself, when they modeled it, stopped some of the flow. And so instead of being a foot higher on the lower end and a foot higher on the upper end, it's the other way around. But it's all roughly 11 to 12. So all the work is going to be done still as it was before in land subject to coastal storm flowage and in Coastal Bank and in the riverfront area, which is previously developed on a 10.585, is previously developed riverfront area. Mr. Chairman, maybe questions would be good.
I'm going to turn over the board for questions.
Making the bridge out of,
It's a fiberglass structure. A lot of these bridges now that they put in, instead of putting in pressure-treated lumber structures, they put in fiberglass structure. It's made to look like wood, but it's a reinforced fiberglass material.
there's space between,
There's no space on the decking. They route a channel in the deck to make it look like planks, but it's not planks, it's a solid structure, solid deck. And it's going to be built on helical piles, and the piles will be up out of the salt marsh.
What's the clearance above the marsh?
If you can go to that cross-section, or actually, I answered that in one of the letters to you also. Depends on the tide level, the clearance to the water, but the clearance under the bridge was something like 5 point something feet at the center line, down to the bottom of the channel. But the marsh comes right up underneath where the bridge is.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I would actually like to see our dock regulations applied to this project. I feel as though it's much too close to the elevation of the water, even at low tide. I feel that it's a real shadowing issue because it's a solid fiberglass deck. And it seems to me that it's significantly too short in terms of the top of bank and things. And a secondary issue is that I feel that there's a stormwater issue here that has not been discussed or put forth. So it's a couple different things. And that's a long run, you can, that photograph right there, of asphalt that run, and it had eroded on two sides of it. You can tell that that rainwater, stormwater had eroded a good portion of the area. So there's some other issues we're not really discussing at this point that I think deserve some discussion.
I mean, I certainly see your point to raising it higher for lighting underneath for as far as the marsh goes.
Full disclosure, I was a caddy there in '69 when they put it in there, but.
Well, I mean, I guess my other question, I'm still not quite sure why, I mean, you've been using a go-around cart path.
Right.
For 7 years now, so I don't think you're really making the, why can't you just continue to use the cart path going around as it is?
The cart path is a safety issue. When you come out of the woods up there, you can see you come out of the woods, you come up onto a fairway, and they're teeing off straight into you as you come out of the woods.
Well,
Right,
Is
where
this-
that cursor was,
with
you're making the turn.
Anytime you're on a golf course, you're pretty much in the line of fire, is that not correct?
With golfers like me, you bet.
And even people driving down the road, you bet.
Well, yeah, I mean,
My aunt used to get golf balls in her yard.
It's interesting photographs.
so that's
be a
just my,
culvert underneath there.
that's just my concern, but
Okay.
anybody else? I'll go to Paul and then Jack.
Yeah, what was the bridge like that was damaged and taken
It
out?
was a wooden structure.
Wooden structure, and was it similar to this one in terms of its profile and distance from the marsh and all that kind of
It
thing?
was actually shorter than the one we're proposing to put in, and slightly lower than
And it
the one
was-
we're proposing to put in.
It was probably made out of some sort of planking or something?
It is right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, this was after it was damaged, but yeah, it was wooden.
And how long was that there? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. You said in '69 it was there? It was there for decades.
Yeah, okay, all right. And so it was in the original plan of the golf course,
It
I guess?
was. That was the original crossing.
Yeah, okay, all right. And this one is different in that the materials are different, but, and it's, you said a little longer and that type of thing?
It is. It's a little longer, just a little bit wider, and it's going to sit on helical piles as opposed to the other one sat on sills, right on the ground.
And does it pose a particular problem that it doesn't have spaces between the planking? It's a different kind of a material? If, for example, that was required, I mean, was that thought of in terms of having something like that as opposed to this product?
We haven't, I mean,
Yeah.
we can put in a wooden bridge, which will have spacing in it. The fiberglass decks don't.
I see, okay. All right. They do have fiberglass planking though, right? I mean, that wouldn't be
Well,
applicable?
there's composite planking.
Yeah, oh, composite,
It's
okay.
a plastic. It's not really a fiberglass.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Jack?
At some place in the plan, excuse me, I saw that there's concrete under there someplace, either in the stream or,
The path was blacktop, which is called bituminous concrete.
and it ends at the stream?
And it ends at the approach to where the old bridge was. The old bridge, there was a
Yeah,
paved path that
sure.
went right up to the edge of the old bridge. So the new one is going to be just slightly over that bituminous concrete, which has actually been, over the 7 years that the bridge has been out, it's been buried by some sand material.
Okay.
Anybody else?
We did do a stormwater checklist, and we talked about, Brittany and I talked about stormwater. What specifically is the concern about stormwater? Because we're not changing any of the impervious surface out there.
I understand that. It's just that it's a fairly long run from up near the clubhouse all the way down, and which it would lead directly into Bass River. Just concerned about that because we're always trying to control stormwater when we can in
Yeah.
terms of how it enters the river. So if there's a way for us to mitigate that, it would be great.
Okay, yeah, we're not proposing changes to that right now, but I hear the concern.
Thank you.
Brittany, anything?
Yeah, so since this is a redevelopment project under the Riverfront Act, these projects have to be an improvement over the existing conditions. And I just have a problem with the fact that the bridge is, like you said, larger, wider than the original bridge. In addition to, you said it's a little bit higher, but it's not offering any of the clearance needed for the salt marsh to have exposure to the light that it needs. So I think we would really like to see something higher that might have to span a little bit wider so that that salt marsh can survive, and it will be an actual improvement over the existing conditions.
If we were to go up, the more you go up, the longer the bridge has to get, and the more expensive the bridge is. And if we were to provide clearances, one-to-one, so there's, the DEP has some recommendations about bridge heights. And I've dealt with this on a lot of DCR bridges recently. And they'd like to see, especially new bridges, they'd like to see one-to-one. So if the bridge is 8 feet wide, they'd like 8 feet of clearance under the bridge. Well, if we put this thing 8 feet up in the air, that bridge is going to be inordinately long and very expensive.
What was the original width of the bridge?
The original width, I think, was 7 feet, and we're going to 8 feet.
I mean, I don't see your height listed in there, and I don't think it's even half to one. the height to width ratio.
Seems like you're like literally right above the salt marsh.
Yeah, it's resting on it.
Yeah, the plans that, the profile that Tim put together, not on those plans, but on the plan prior to that, plan set prior to that, we had 3 sets of plans. Then we have existing conditions, which Conoco engineers and scientists, surveyors did. And then we have two plans that show proposed conditions, one of which has a profile in it that you asked for. And then what was just shown on the screen are the actual plans that come from the bridge manufacturer. So it gives a lot of the details about the bridge. So that's from the bridge manufacturer.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't locate the height anywhere. I know you had this diagram, but I didn't feel confident measuring what the height was there on this. But we definitely need to know that height to the salt marsh
So
layer,
it's
to the
1,
surface.
2, 3, 4 feet.
The salt marsh surface is here as well, so that would be less than 1 foot.
Right, exactly, under the bridge.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the height, that's the measurement we're looking for, the smallest height between.
That was exactly the condition before. That's where the bridge was before.
Yes,
There's no salt marsh under the old bridge. Now that it's been gone for 7 years, there's, as I delineated, there's salt marsh vegetation that's come back into that area.
Well, it sort of says something, doesn't it?
It does. If the bridge had never been, well, if the culvert had never been there further up, you'd have a tidal creek that went all the way up to the pond, too.
What we're saying is like there should be some sort of an improvement to the previous conditions. Well, obviously if there was no salt marsh at the first time, that's okay. But now there is salt marsh, so you need to show some sort of improvement.
But the improvement to the riverfront is removal of some of the cart paths from riverfront. So we're taking some areas right now that are disturbed riverfront, some of those cart paths that you see there, that won't be needed if we put this bridge back in. And so we can restore those cart paths, the one that goes all the way through the woods, goes all the way up around by that hole, and then comes back down to the shell. We can get rid of that entire loop and restore that entire area that's in riverfront. And so that's significant improvement to existing conditions in riverfront.
You think that was ever permitted?
With the
Cart path? Probably not.
I mean, I'm sure they probably did it only because, I mean, that was the alternative at the time. I
Right.
mean, I'm sure that was probably worked out between the administrator or whatever, but
yeah, I mean, did you have that in your narrative, the restoration of the paths and planting with them, restoration to what condition? Grass or?
Well, that's open for discussion. We can do it as turf. We'll do it as turf up by the fairway, certainly. We can do native plantings along the pad that go through the woods.
It would still not be an improvement over the conditions for the salt marsh. It would be for riverfront. For the sections that would be planted with native plantings, I don't think returning it to grass would be considered restoration.
Waterways would approve it.
See, I think it would be, because right now it's not soil. And if we put soil back there, it now falls under 10.584 instead of 10.585. It's not previously degraded riverfront
It's
area.
disturbed.
It is disturbed, certainly. But a lot of the golf course is in, or the neighboring areas, they're all disturbed riverfront. But they're not necessarily degraded riverfront.
what's the performance standard for salt marsh?
The salt marsh, you're not supposed to put anything in the salt marsh. You can have shading effects in a salt marsh.
You can't lose it or damage it.
You can, because of shading. Shading is one of the limited project allowances for salt marsh.
But this is not a limited project.
Yeah, this is not, I don't see this as being a limited project.
Well, the performance, I wrote out all the performance standards. They're all in the NOI, and I addressed that performance standard within the notice of intent.
And I spoke at length with the DEP Sierra representative, and he does not consider this a limited project, so I cannot consider it a limited project. But I think all we need here is some distance between the salt marsh and the bridge. The 1 foot is not enough for this commission, and maybe adding some spacing, using a different material to have some light penetration. Otherwise, the salt marsh is going to be damaged. And that's what we're trying to avoid, and that's all.
I have a question. You just referenced a limited project. Could you define that for me, please?
Limited projects are only subject to a portion of the regulations at the commission's discretion.
I'm sorry, a portion?
A portion of, they're not subject to all of the regulations in 310 CMR 10. They're only subject to a portion of them.
Why is this not a limited project?
If it were replacement in kind of a bridge, it would be. But Andrew Poyant has determined that since the bridge has not been there for 7 years, it's not considered replacement.
Okay. And just one other question about the original bridge. How was that damaged? Was it because of flooding or just old age?
Neither. It was, one of the workers took a piece of equipment across that shouldn't have been taken across.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Brittany, anything else?
Just a second. No, I don't think so. I would agree with Rick's stormwater statement, but I think we really just need some height there and improvement over the existing, which doesn't have to be one-to-one, but has to be some.
About spaces, does it need
spacing.
spaces between?
Spacing.
We can look at changing the material.
Yeah.
Yeah, putting in a different kind of bridge.
I'd be more comfortable with that.
So spacing, with
Height.
different material spacing, and daylighting underneath. As best as practicable there.
So the deck materials that get you spacing require that you have stringers, and the stringers are typically made out of pressure-treated lumber. So I want to mention that to you, because that's just like when you build a deck, and you put, 3/8 inch spacing or something between the boards. Whether you make the boards pressure-treated, or you make them out of Trex, or, some other material, they have to go onto stringers, and those stringers, you have to screw it onto the stringers. Those stringers are typically pressure-treated, just so you know.
We prefer not
But the
plastic for
dimensions?
decking, if possible.
Not plastic?
Yeah.
Well, what's the dimension on the stringers?
They're, this length, I don't know, I'm not a designer, but I imagine they're gonna be like 2x12s.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little under what we would normally require or look for, but.
And the bridge designer said the one issue is as you make the bridge longer, and the nice thing about the fiberglass reinforced bridges is we can make it this long and we can put the helical piles on either end and hold the bridge up from either end. As you make the bridge longer with those kinds of stringers, you have to put in more supports. And so now we may be talking about having to put supports into the salt marsh in order to be able to hold the stringers, to hold the decking. You can't just make this thing infinitely long and have it land on the ends. It's, at some point, you need structure.
I think we get that. We review so many dock applications, so.
All right.
I was gonna, but I'm not designing the project for you.
Go ahead.
No. Anyhow, any further discussion among the board?
No, I think
Is there anybody in the public who'd like to make a comment on this one? No? Anybody on Zoom? I see none. Would you like to take a continuance then? Or, so how much time do you need to address those issues?
When is your next meeting?
7th?
December 7th, and then the 21st, if we have enough commission members to attend.
Are there gonna be 4 people here on the 21st?
I'll be here. I'll be here.
Yeah, I'll be here.
I cannot make the 7th.
So the 7th or the 21st?
I cannot make the 7th, so. 21st,
21st?
please.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, if that's the case, then do I have a motion to continue this to December 21st?
So moved. Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you for
See
your
you
time.
on the 21st. Next order of business is another notice of intent for SE 83-2403 Royal Gorowski WRS Engineering LLC for Paul and Nancy Cruz, 52 Prince Road, after the fact filing for unpermitted patios, rinsing station, and gravel hardscape and land subject to coastal storm flowage and in the buffer zones to a coastal bank and salt marsh.
Good evening, Board. Again.
Just if you
My
go
name
ahead
is
and-
Paul Cruz. This is my wife, Nancy Cruz. Roy, our engineer, could not be present this time, so we're here representing, I guess, ourselves, and we're going to do the best we can. We are submitting this NOI after the fact, after an enforcement order. And we feel that we've made a lot of mistakes here. My wife and I are learning how to live on the water, so, and apparently we're not doing it correctly, so we're here to ask the board to approve this plan, which we feel represents some additional mitigation for some of the stuff that we have done.
All right, do you want to just go into the plans, or do you want to say anything else first? or-
Well, so like I said, we're new to this, and the enforcement order stated that we had some hardscape issues that we had to deal with, and we had put some, apparently we couldn't put pea stone, we had put pea stone all around the whole seawall, and which we thought was an impervious surface, which we thought would great and control the, all of the water and drainage, and apparently that's not allowed. The reason why we did it is we've got an autistic grandson, so we were just kind of giving him a barrier from the property. We did put in a deck, which I was under the assumption if we stayed, within it was my error. If we stayed with, outside of that 35-foot, I guess, buffer zone.
Oh, not it. Sorry.
Well,
I don't see any buses.
I didn't realize you were flipping pictures. So the deck, that entire deck was there, aside from the two little wings. Yeah, that right there and the other side. And we just kind of squared them off with the house. But the original deck was there. From beforehand, and
then the patio on the side,
Yeah,
which I don't know if I have a picture of. Nope.
we put in a rinsing station. Believe it or not, the Board of Health requested that it's like, hey, why don't you put a rinsing station right outside of here? I said, okay, no problem, thank you. And so we did. The staircase was a replacement already, that was already there, which we had discussed with Brittany before. Oh, and there's the side patio there.
Oh, that was 4th of July.
So we are proposing to remove all the stone that we put in around the wall and replace it with native plants, mainly Pennsylvania sedge grass and seagrass, along with that.
Reason being for the grass is our grandson, and he doesn't know no, and I don't know if he will get it. So grass is softer when you're playing and you fall or you trip or whatever, and so that's the reason for just the grasses. I'm really not comfortable putting anything else in. He's very prone to injury.
And the enforcement order stated that we had to do it at 2-to-1. So that's where we came up with that little table where it's 2-to-1, and we're kind of saying we'll put the Pennsylvania sedge grass and the American beach seagrass all in between and all along the whole property, which is approximately almost 1,800 square feet of it. And that's all I got.
All right, questions from the board?
I have a few.
Yep.
All these that are saying existing, is there a plan of what was there before? Because this all
They
says it's
didn't-
existing, but it's existing because they put it in.
Yeah, so
Photos.
there's an RDA, I have an RDA on file showing what was existing. The scale is slightly different, so it was difficult to, sorry. Oops. Yeah, so it would be helpful for the engineer to call out the areas that are new, that this permit is seeking permitting for.
Yeah.
I thought he did that. He had labeled
Yeah, it's all in
labeled
gray.
A, B, and then they're the gray
The
area.
schematic, it's all in gray, well,
Yeah, the two back patios, the side patio, and then the rinsing station. The rest was all existing.
Yeah, they're just the way that he labels it is very inconsistent. So,
Okay.
Yeah, that's what, that's.
so,
that's
so
one
like
of the-
patio to be permitted or like patio existing.
Everybody knows the house, there's not that much room on the property to put
Yeah.
anything, so.
And my other thought is, you use the sage-grouse as a warning. I think some sort of low shrubs would be more of a warning than just the grass that you can run right through. I'd like to see some shrubs incorporated all along the perimeter,
If I could
along with the
interrupt,
grass.
Ellie, we are putting in between, it's on the
Yeah,
plan,
we're putting some beach grass.
more grass,
It's
but
beach grass and
Yes.
sage, but the beach grass isn't really a plant, a bush. You
It
could
comes
put
out
in
huge,
bayberry,
very
and you can put, I know what
I
they look
understand.
like, yeah.
I'm hesitant with prickly things, so I would,
So,
but I'm,
my understanding is that we could pick as long as they were on the native list. And I remember we had talked about, I talked to Brendan, where we were only gonna put
put grass. and she
grass.
said
She said, no, you gotta have a couple. Okay, so we picked a couple more, and
I
they
mean,
were
yeah,
from the
we,
list.
with mitigation plantings, we usually do require a mix of shrubs and grasses. Yeah,
Shrubs.
shrubs. Mostly shrubs we require, with grasses, limited involvement, but
So you would rather see a shrub instead of American beach grass planted?
A mixture of both.
Or mixture,
A mixture of both.
yeah.
And I think that would give you more of a visual deterrent than just the grasses. I mean, anybody can run through
The
grass.
sedge grass grows really tall and gets very wavy, very bushy and pretty.
I would also recommend against the Pennsylvania sedge. It's actually an understory woodland plant, and it wouldn't survive on the coast. But I can give you other suggestions
Well, we
as
talked
well.
to
Why is
the-
it on
We
the-
talked to, what's the big thing up by us in Westport?
So all
What's
this
the name?
gray
Sylvan
stuff was new.
Nurseries and described our land and, but they, I don't know, they said it was okay, but I can double check on that one. The last thing I want is to go through another planting again.
Yeah,
if it
you don't
dies,
want them to
know.
die.
No, not at all.
That's all I have.
Anybody else?
Can you explain, can you explain again about the rinsing station and what happened there?
It was an outside shower, and we were putting the deck in, and we were doing, we were fixing the garage, and we had gone for a permit, and he said, the Board of Health, Bruce from the Board of Health said, hey, why don't, because you got the septic right there. He said, why don't you put in a outside shower?
So it connects to the septic?
No, it does not.
Okay, so it just runs off?
It was in the same septic building process type of.
Is there a dry well for the runoff from the shower?
I don't believe there is. There is a 2 feet gravel under there, but definition of a dry well, I don't know what the definition of a dry well
Okay,
is.
a dry well is just like a container that's
Right.
buried that can slow down water
Water.
to infiltrate into the soil, so it doesn't run off the surface.
Yeah, because that would run right into the,
Yeah, because it's right on that slope there. I'd be worried about that running over the bulkhead.
It's not connected.
So I worry that, I don't know if that you just said the same thing, but I worry about the runoff from the shower and the soap and all that
So
stuff.
if that was connected to the septic, it would be okay?
You could do a dry
It'd be-
well.
it would be
You could do your own
better,
separate
yeah,
dry well.
dry well.
I don't know what's entailed, but we could figure it out.
I think you just gotta dig it up and put a dry well in there,
Yeah,
correct?
just
I
dig
wouldn't
a
go through
hole.
the cost and expense of putting it into your septic. I would, because I don't know if the Board of Health would want to see that either, but,
Probably not.
but you could certainly, put a dry well in.
Okay. Would I have to come back
You know,
for an application for that?
You could put it on this plan.
On this plan.
Okay.
a river where he put all
Okay.
that patio in, we made him put all those bushes in.
I mean, truth be told, do you know how many showers we've taken out there this year? Not one.
We rinsed our feet. My grandson.
Yeah, we did put out there, because we've got the beach around the corner there with the staircase, and we were using that kind of as a rinse-in station when we're coming off of the beach to rinse off the sand.
Yeah, he was swimming in the creek all summer.
Like I said, I know this is an after the fact, and I'm learning it's not how things are done, so we apologize for that piece of it. And we do realize, there are rules in place for our environment, to protect our environment, because we love the creek, and we want to protect it as much as anybody else.
Well, I think you could do better on the planting, that's for sure. I think you could see a little bit more diversity in terms of type of planting.
And there is recommended spacing on those plant lists that has to be met too. These are way too far apart, at 10 feet for an American beach grass plug.
Okay. I can explain why they were 10 feet.
Well, it was for a look, because I'm all
Yeah,
about
it
the
was,
looks.
and
I mean,
I was under the assumption, when you gave me the list, I only had to do the whatever was on the list. So I was like, oh, we'll put Pennsylvania sedge, it'll be great, and we'll have, a whole bunch of grass all the way down, and then you wanted some extra plantings, like, all right, well, we'll put the big seagrass in, and we'll plant it on
Keep the lawn
on the
super
thing, and-
short and let the sedge wave around.
Believe it or
It'll
not,
look
we were
really
trying to
pretty.
plant it in between the pilings.
Yeah. But if we swapped out the American seagrass for a bush, then we could do the spacing.
What was your required
The
spacing?
required spacing is by plant and by size. So for example, if you plant a 3-gallon bayberry, they're approximately 4 feet apart. And beach grass is usually spaced 1 foot apart per culm. So it's by plant. It's by plant that you choose. You have to follow the chart for the spacing.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, we had one that was similar where somebody put in a patio and came before us for an after the fact, and we made them put in substantial plantings to
Yeah, I think we
compensate
definitely
for.
need to beef up the old planting protocols there.
Ask a question about that, please.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that you could put in. You could,
Something non-prickly would be.
Plenty of those.
what
yeah,
I'd
you could
focus
do lots
on.
of things that,
Bearberry.
winterberry, you've got, there's a whole variety of different things that will look nice and, take up a little space and then fill in, but, yeah, Paul.
I wonder why that wasn't made clear in the beginning. Did we not provide sufficient information about the types of plantings and the number of different types of things that needed to go in? 'Cause it seemed like they
Yeah, I
list
gave them
and
the.
picked two, and were, as he says, under the impression that that would be okay. So do we have to change how we provide that information or something?
And we're working on a Town of Yarmouth approved plant list. The plant list that we use right now is from the Barnstable County Cooperative Extension. But I always provide the same plant list for everybody who asks, and
But it wasn't clear, I guess, that there was a desire to have a number of different plants. That would be my concern.
It was made clear to the
it was made clear to the engineer.
Oh, it was.
Apologies if it was not conveyed to us that way or at all. So, because I was kind of a little bit pushy with what I wanted because of Finn, my grandson, sorry. So I was kind of really tough about it because I'm really worried about him. We just got out of the ER last week because he wanted to show us Spider-Man moves and fell. I'm really concerned with him. So that's why I was like, can we just do something soft and grass? And that's probably where I understood it was one thing. It was not conveyed to us. We needed two.
No, I just wanted, I think we have an obligation to make sure that the public, when they come before us, knows what steps they need to take, and for example, how many different kinds of plantings there are, because otherwise we're kind of, returning to the same problem maybe again and again. So that's all.
And I agree with you, Mr. Huggins. I mean, when you read the DEP regs, it kind of says you got to mitigate, and I don't know, maybe I missed it and I did see the spacing on the gallons and stuff, I did see that.
But we thought it was an extra, like,
But I thought it
thing.
would, honestly, we
Well,
thought we were being gracious and saying, all right, I'm going to put
Right.
this here. I'll put the seagrass in, because I thought the Pennsylvania sedge would have sufficed as a plant, because it's on the native plant list, and that's where we came up with that type of,
And then I had to be
that
fancy
design.
Nancy and try and make it look pretty.
Again, this is why we go with talk to the engineers about this. And the engineers all know exactly what they should be doing as far as mitigation.
Yep.
There's not an engineer that we deal with ever that doesn't understand the concepts and principles of mitigation, so that's on them. That's not
This
on.
one did not, evidently.
Not on us. All right, so how much time do you think you're going to need to develop a little bit better planting plan?
Oh, God, I have to go back to them. Well, let's try and get it ready for,
Yeah, as you can
The
tell, we're
21st,
kind of 0
that
for
would be
2,
the
0 for
only
2
way.
here, so we're kind of,
21st, is
we
it?
could probably make that meeting.
Yeah, we could
Definitely,
probably
I
make
don't
the
know about the
21st.
7th. I would
don't
have
think
to
we could
talk
do
to
the 7th.
Roy.
You can't plant anything right now anyhow, so.
engineer-wise,
Engineer to come back
engineer-wise.
in and get it
Yeah, you've got
approved.
plenty of
No,
time.
We're
to
not
work
done,
with
we're not changing a thing.
No, we just want to finish this off and say goodbye, you lovely people, and we don't want to see you again.
I do have a couple other questions. I think the gravel in this area should also be removed right by the shower. If that's, was included in the gravel that was unpermitted, that isn't on the plan right now.
It was not included in the mitigation, or?
No, it was not. And I had a question about, is this lawn terracing, was that installed by you guys, or was that Lair?
Well,
That was,
so that had, believe it or not, railroad ties in there.
and the land was falling.
Okay, so it was already terraced.
It was already,
Okay,
Terraced.
that was,
Yes.
Something stronger, because the land's sliding.
a lot of the,
I was just curious if it was replaced, because it looks like the tree hasn't been disturbed, but those
No.
look new, so I wanted to ask.
they had used railroad ties around the entire property.
Or rotted.
Are you gonna request a,
Yes.
thing under the shower?
Yeah.
Dry well under the shower?
And the engineer should clearly note the hardscape that is remaining, that is seeking permitting through this application, and show the differences from this, between the last permit, which is this site plan, and his site plan, to make it clear for us where he came up with the square footage calculations.
What permit is that, Brittany?
I can send you all of these. They're on our public access. It's from 2007. This is the last permit we have on file. So any work done in between this permit and where we are right now, he should point out differences, because I saw there was an increase in the driveway as well as the shower area and the walkway. It didn't look like he had accounted for those. So his numbers were a little bit off, but nothing that can't make it into your already designated mitigation areas. We just like to see the accurate numbers.
Okay. So you want the change from the 2007 plan?
Yeah, noted on his plan, on this one.
Okay.
Okay,
It's just a minor thing, when he redoes the plan, I'd ask him to please relabel them as not existing/new patio. It should be just new patio. It's a simple little thing, but it's
Helpful for you.
an
we have
accuracy.
to know what was
We know
there.
because we put it in, so.
Yeah, I think that's, and like I said, I think you can take another whack at the planting. I mean, there's ways to do this where you can sort of clump those shrubs and things in certain points and allow more for beach grass and that sort of thing, and
I'll work
in
on
certain
it.
areas. So, just remember wherever you're, I mean, it usually isn't where you're doing curves, that's always a good place to expand the bed, and, that might be one of the places where you want to put the shrubs
Put
then.
it where
So-
I know he doesn't hang out, and I'll be happy with that. Then I'll teach him how to stay
So
away.
are you,
You're all clear on what you need to add to
Yep.
the
Can I ask a
plan, right?
question on that?
Yeah, mhm.
so for argument's sake, let's say we decide to go, Brittany, can you just kind of point to the left side by the garage, all that whole side? If we wanted to put plantings all on that side, we wouldn't have to do anything on the wall. If we had the square footage mitigation, is that what you're referring to, where we would did a
No.
corner?
No. I
No,
know where- I
sorry.
know what
You gotta
corner.
do the wall.
Stop,
Like more
please.
along a
Going
wall,
along there.
the seawall.
I'm going along the corner, because that's where my kid's not gonna go, like
Yeah.
way down. And I'm gonna leave it there, where I know he's not gonna bother it, and he's not gonna be hurt. It's all about his safety, and
I mean, you
have to
can
do-
also always put in a barrier, like a split rail fence to demarcate the planting, so there's a clear boundary between the lawn and the plantings,
It
which,
doesn't have to be it can be like a single rail fence. Those are often,
I'm just gonna put it in one area and teach him. No. We're getting there.
That's no
We're getting there.
excuse.
okay.
He's learning.
So we're all set? You're clear with what you need to do then?
I believe we are.
And just, you'll aim for 12/21?
That's probably the best we can do,
Yeah, I think that's.
to give Roy time to work on it.
Okay. Unless there's any further, is there anybody in the audience who has any comments or questions on this permit? Anybody in the audience?
on Zoom.
Zoom?
Oh, sorry, Zoom?
You know?
I know, I'm like, please no.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion then to continue this to December 21st?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
I'd like to thank the board, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not that too far.
Next order of business is a continued request for certificate of compliance for SE 83-22702 Channel Point Drive. Brittany, you just want to give a quick rundown so we can,
Sure, Mr. Chairman and I met with Kieran Haley on site on Tuesday, and we discussed solutions for this project. It was a partially failed shoreline stabilization project, where portions of the compost sock were crushing some salt marsh. But we agreed on some solutions that we discussed on site, and so they're going to take care of portions of the silt fence that are exposed and remove them from the site, and remove a portion of the compost sock that can't be anchored into the bank, lift portions that can be reinstalled and anchored where possible, and plant bare areas at the bottom of the bank and within the sock if possible with high marsh species. And this permit does expire in June, so they're going to try and get that all done in this spring. But at this time, they don't meet the conditions for their certificate of compliance. So they have a clear path ahead of them to get into compliance.
Brittany, can you email me the letter so I can put it into the minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, I think, I mean, now that I've been out there to see it, I'm far less concerned. I mean, I think what we're proposing is, it'll solve all the issues.
Yep. Agreed.
It's just, but we need more time, so the best way to move forward then is just to deny this request. Let the year or so go by, or a couple of years go by, and then they can resubmit for the COC, and I don't think there'll be any issue then. So-
Great.
All right, so unless there's any further discussion among the board on that one, do I have a motion then to, right, so I'm going to make the motion to approve. You're going to want to deny it, so everybody say no, say nay. Do I have a motion to approve the request for certificate of compliance for SE 83-2270?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Unanimously, or
One abstention. You
Denied.
didn't get that.
Yeah.
So it's
He wasn't here for the original.
unanimously.
one abstention, okay.
Those in favor?
Right,
Approve.
so that brings us to,
You said, motion, you moved it? Or
I
just-
moved it.
She moved, I seconded it.
Okay. Sorry.
That's all right.
That brings us to our final, almost final. We're here to the public meeting portion of the meeting for the Wetlands Protection and Regulatory Updates. We have been working diligently on new and updated regulations for, that will apply eventually with the bylaw. So these are proposed to implement important performance standards for land subject to coastal storm flowage, update the mitigation and setback requirements for buffer zones, clarify procedure, and allow for modest wetlands replication. And again, these regulations will align then with the town's goal to manage, protect, and improve the natural resources. So everybody has gotten a copy of the regulations, hopefully.
We have.
Did anybody have any comments or questions or anything specifically as it relates to the regulations?
Yeah, my questions were answered.
No, they look very good.
Look great.
I can give a brief summary of the updates to the audience.
Go
if you
to it.
want. There's a few administrative updates. We decided to add a butter notification for direct abutters only for requests for determination of applicability. We are proposing to implement a continuance request maximum of 3 from the applicant only. This would not include requests for continuance or continuances required by the commission for additional information. And we updated our plan and drawing requirements to give the commission a better idea of what's happening on the plan, including edges of vegetation boundaries. The regulatory updates include land subject to coastal storm flowage performance standards, including subsections of the moderate wave action and velocity flood zones. Clarifications and updates to our dock regulations, including clarifications for boat lifts and jet ski lifts, which are often a subject of debate among our applicants. We're proposing to decrease the minimum vegetated wetland size when they're not bordering water bodies from 3,000 square feet to 500 square feet, and adjusting the definition of a vegetated wetland to match the DEP definition, which would be 50% or more of the vegetation being a wetland indicator plant and the existence of saturated soils. Updates to mitigation and setback guidelines, including our mitigation ratios, and introduction of guidelines for tree replacement and plantings in foundation landscape beds, with the addition of wetland replication allowance in the size of 1,500 square feet or less. So if you have any questions or comments, please come up to the microphone and ask away.
And if you would just state your name for the record before you start.
Certainly, Christine Marzigliano. In section 143-6, coordination with other boards. I always like to see boards working together with each other. And you list the Select Board, the Planning Board, the Board of Appeals, the Board of Health, Town Engineer, and Building Commissioner. I would like to suggest that perhaps, my first suggestion is perhaps you might want to check with the Historical Commission or Old Kings Highway, depending on where the property is located. But my second suggestion,
Can you repeat the section?
Where are you referring to?
143-6, this is from the town meeting.
All right, so that's the proposed wetland bylaw that was unfortunately posted in the wrong version. So we have withdrawn our updates to the bylaw. That was at town meeting on November 7th, but we are still moving forward with regulatory updates without having the need to change the bylaw. So all of our regulation updates would be allowed under our current bylaw. So our bylaw is remaining the same.
We're not discussing this section tonight?
We're not discussing that document, but I can definitely note your comments for
Okay.
when we come back in spring. What were you saying to add the open space committee, and what was your other comment?
Historical.
Right. Well, my other suggestion was that you also check with existing archaeological studies, because we know there's a study at the farm, Taylorbury Farm, and apparently when NSTAR came through about half a dozen years ago on the north side, they had to do an archaeological study, and they found Indian artifacts. So I think both anytime it is an existing archaeological study for a particular property, perhaps the study should be reviewed. And this is on file. This is from a study that was done for the Winslow Crocker House. They went out 5,000 feet, and they found this NSTAR study. So it's just another tool for you to use.
I don't think that would fall under our purview. I don't think we would be allowed to ask for something like that. But if it was in the Historical Commission's purview, we would be able to lead them there. It wouldn't have anything to do with the Wetlands Protection Act regulations.
Well, these Indian artifacts are right on Little Greeno Pond, so that certainly would be within your purview.
But not within this commission's purview. So if anything is found, it would have to still meet our performance standards and regulations, but we wouldn't have any say over what happens with the archaeological information.
No, but if somebody wanted to build on the property,
Yeah,
it would certainly be
certainly.
of interest.
I guess I'm confused at what you're asking.
Not require somebody to do an archaeological survey as part of that would come from a state historic commission or a local historic commission. It's not something that we could require.
That's because
I'm saying it already exists. I'm talking basically about the NSTAR property. And NSTAR wants to build on this property. You would have purview around Little Greeno Pond, and around Little Greeno Pond, there's Indian artifacts.
Right, but we don't have the authority to tell somebody they have to do an archaeological survey. We would have the right to tell them to do an ecological survey for endangered species or something like that, but.
No, I'm not asking you to do a survey. I'm just asking you to use the tool that exists.
It would be upon the applicant to provide us with that information. We don't have any way to have that without it being
Okay.
provided to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Jack.
Is she suggesting that we just refer over to these other committees? Not that we are going to take actions ourselves, but just if somebody discovers an early, not just American Indians, but it could be, all sorts of historical items. So if we had a reference that said we would do that.
Happy to do that.
Okay.
to the best of our ability,
Yeah, when the
to the
evidence
appropriate
is
departments that
given to
might
us.
have interest in the project.
Yeah, of course.
Does that work? Okay.
Does that address your question mostly? Other
Okay.
questions?
Anybody else?
Doug Peabody, 16 and 12 Highland Street in West Yarmouth. My question has to do with is the bylaw going to be put on the town warrant again, so you actually are going to have an amendment to the bylaw?
We are hoping to, yes.
Okay. And in the meantime, these regulations are being amended,
That's correct.
and the purpose of amending them is to make it more restrictive in terms of
Not necessarily.
building near wetlands?
It's not necessarily to make it more restrictive, it's to help guide both the commission and homeowners as well as their engineers and consultants in better addressing the performance standards of the Wetlands Protection Act and the town bylaw. So they're not designed to take to do any further burden in that respect, other than to help further address the performance standards that are issued under State Wetlands Protection Act and the town bylaw.
And then
For me, as a commissioner, it helps us do a better job, helps us understand it. It helps us to have a conversation with the engineers, so we can understand how we'd be applying and they would be interpreting. So it's a clarification in many ways.
Yeah, just for context, these were last revised in December 2016, and that was only the portion related to the docks. And before that, it was last revised in 2003. So the information in our regulations is a little bit dated, and we're just trying to add a lot of clarification so that all of our, like Ed like the chairman said, all of our consultants and applicants have the information right in front of them, and they don't have to wait for the commission's discretion to discuss a lot of it. A lot of it will be available readily for them to have.
Is there a restriction in these new regulations on building in a velocity zone?
Yes, there is, but there are no parcels in the town of Yarmouth that are not already, that are buildable and vacant, that this will prevent from being built upon. I surveyed all of the parcels, and the ones that are vacant are not buildable for other reasons already. So this is just put in there to make sure and to make a statement that because we have redevelopment standards, we have to have new development standards. I know it makes no sense to have something in there that restricts new construction if there can't be any, but we have it in there just because we have a statement about redevelopment.
And what about the 100-year flood zone
There are new performance standards for the 100-year flood zone.
that require what precisely?
Just a minute. So here's the section on the flood zone. And so the performance standards that are added here are not novel. They are used from guiding documents that have been published through the Cape Cod Commission and the Model Resiliency Bylaw from the MACC, as well as other towns on Cape Cod. So these performance standards state that projects within the flood zone will not have an adverse effect on the interests protected by the bylaw by the following. So there must be no adverse effect on the ability of the land to absorb and contain floodwaters, the ability of land to buffer more inland areas to flooding and wave damage, increasing the elevation or velocity of floodwaters, displacing or diverting floodwaters to other properties or other resource areas, a fence requirement to have 6 inches of clearance below to allow passage of floodwaters and wildlife, cannot cause or create the likelihood or damage of structures within the floodplain as debris or collateral damage, saltwater intrusion, prevention of migration of resource areas such as salt marshes due to sea level rise, and this is the redevelopment standard. If it's already developed, redevelopment must improve existing conditions. There's the separate velocity and moderate wave action zone down here, and the velocity zone, we would have no new construction, but that already cannot happen. None of those lots are buildable. And then expansion or significant, substantial improvement or repair of the foundation of the building as defined in the building code would require elevation 2 feet above the base flood elevation, and that's to protect not only the resource areas, but the loss of property and life of our residents. And they're similar in the moderate wave action where we've had that 2 feet above base flood elevation for new construction and substantial improvements.
The reason I asked the question is you just approved, without asking for comment, a renewal at 8 Grove Street where there's going to be a pool in a abutting in a velocity zone right adjacent to a flood zone where the elevations are the same and the wave action is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, why do you approve 3 years in advance something that isn't going to expire until June when you're about ready to put further restrictions on that kind of a build?
We are only allowed to.
Yeah, we're granting a 3-year extension to the
Something we've already approved.
existing permit. So they have already come before us. The expiration date, including COVID tolling, was June of 2024, right? And so they are required to come at least 30 days before it expires to ask for an extension if they so desire. The extension is just extending that permit, the order of conditions that we had already issued to the homeowner. And so, at this point, an extension we wouldn't apply new rules to an extended order. So they would still have to play under the rules that existed at the time when they originally got their permit. So that's why we're giving them, but it's a standard 3-year extension is the standard when it comes for asking for extensions for orders.
That's a particularly unique and pristine area.
Again, again, all they were asking for was an extension. It was, we had already given and issued an order of conditions for that parcel about 3 years ago. And we can't change the rules on them midstream. So, and they're by law, they're allowed to ask for an extension. So if they ask for another extension now, we don't have to grant for 3 years. I mean, we never have to, but we normally, the first time somebody asks for an extension, we will normally grant a 3-year extension because that's just considered the basic rule, so.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Anybody else?
Hi, Will Merck. Page 10 of the marked up copy there says that flood control over the change in the language says that the commission will have flood control over all areas where sea level rise is expected. And is that without any limitation?
Can you clarify where you're looking at?
It's page 10 of the PDF,
Of the marked up one or the clean one?
the marked up one.
In the definition section?
If you go to page 10 of the PDF, I think you've got,
I'm sorry.
And I think, are you looking at the bylaw?
no, the regulations.
Okay, can you say the
Definition
section
of
number?
flood, definition of flood control
Oh, flood
is
control.
amended.
Okay.
Definition of flood control.
Yeah, current and future conditions given sea level rise.
Could you tell us the number?
It's page 7. Is the definition of flood control, that's what you're asking about, right?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Just want to make sure that we're on the right
Same
page.
page, right. Well, the PDF is one page number and the document is a different one.
Yeah, so this will be based on the calculated sea level rise numbers that are publicly available. We wouldn't be just using our imaginations on that.
Okay, in what time period is it that you're defining sea level rise? By 2050 or 70 or?
I don't think our current regulations refer to sea level rise. This may have been left over from the bylaw that I missed, but I can see where else flood control is mentioned.
But I'm just suggesting that a closer definition of what it is you're proposing would be useful.
Okay.
Or a limitation.
That is a good point.
On page 46 of the PDF, which is probably page 40.
By 43
of the document.
I think it's 40. So what are you looking for?
Under LSCSF, the new definition, which I think you were just on that page a little while ago.
Yes.
What number would that be?
Land subject to coastal storm flowage. It would be on page 40. 4.10, land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Okay, so in these new zones, the MOWA and the V zones, is there a map of them?
They're in the V zone, at least, is on the FEMA maps. And I think the moderate,
On the FEMA map, is it known as a VE zone?
yes.
Okay,
I don't know why.
this could be a lot clearer. And the MOWA zone is not on the FEMA map.
They're not, but they're easily calculated, I think, from when you're preparing a site plan, the area between the velocity zone and
Moderate wave action.
moderate wave action, yeah.
Okay. So that non-engineers can understand these, is it possible to have a map of these zones in the new regulations?
We can refer to the map that they're provided at, yes.
The FEMA maps are not user-friendly, as you may know.
That is what we wouldn't be using, but we can refer to them.
Okay, that would be helpful. And on page 59 of the PDF, it talks about wetland replication prohibited in rare, threatened, endangered areas.
Yes.
So does that refer to the replicated wetland? Or is it saying that you just can't do a mitigation banking type of project?
You wouldn't be able to damage or destroy the wetland that you would want to replace in estimated or priority habitat for rare species.
Okay, even though you do mitigate someplace else?
Yes, because we're trying to eliminate wetlands destruction where rare species occur.
Right, okay.
So that's where it would be not allowed. If that's unclear, I can make that more clear.
Well, it's a little unclear in that you might be saying you can't create a new replicated wetland in that area.
Okay, yeah, I don't
See what I
think
mean?
we would allow that either because the habitat could be for a non-wetland species. So we wouldn't want the endangered species habitat to remain unchanged.
Okay, perhaps, but
Yeah.
clarity is good.
Clarify.
Okay, and then just a general question. In the purposes paragraph, there's a lot of language about the commission expanding its reach and doing more things than the Wetland Act currently allows you to do. And so this is certainly an expansion of your powers. But how do these, in what ways do these new powers affect the residents' ability to adapt to sea level rise?
It's our goal for, under these regulations, to improve the resilience of Yarmouth residents. It's not our goal to limit development. We want our Yarmouth residents to be able to, under these regulations, safely build and live in these coastal areas where they can be dangerous now and even more so in the future. So while there is an increase somewhat of some of the regulations here, it's not necessarily going to impact those residents in a negative way. They will be able to, with these standards, be more resilient in those dangerous coastal areas.
Okay. Maybe a paragraph on that, because when the commission says it's expanding its powers to protect all the worthy conservation assets that you're protecting, and then you have sea level rise where property owners are inevitably going to have to change their footprint or move a road or do all kinds of things, what appears to be a tightening of the regulations is in conflict with that.
I don't agree that it's in conflict with that because the purpose of these is definitely to protect wetland resource areas, but also to protect the livelihoods, property, and lives of Yarmouth residents.
Okay, thank you.
I would agree with that statement, Brittany. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So Brittany,
Yes.
I think it's Will, right? Yes. I think what Will is saying is more clarity. Are you going to take care of that?
Expansion, yeah.
Yeah, we could
Expand what
add
you said.
a paragraph or so describing the reasons. I thought in the new land subject 2, there was a new purpose section there, but I can expand on that purpose section to make sure we're including the resilience portion and not only that we're protecting the property as well.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
What was your last name again? I'm sorry. Merck.
Can you give us your address again?
Oh, 979 Rhode Island Road.
Thank you.
Thank you. More questions?
Anybody else?
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate,
Thank you very
we
much
really
for-
appreciate your interest in this.
Still have might have somebody online.
Do we have anybody on, sorry, yeah, I mean, you can go if you want. Do we have anybody in Zoom who would like to make any comments on the regulations?
No.
I see none.
I did receive, sorry, for the record, I did receive public comment from Shorefront Consulting from Mark Burgess, and I did respond. It is a little bit lengthy, but he did have some concerns, mostly in note. I won't read through all of them. The ones that were making changes about. He asked if the jet ski float regulations, if we intend to allow jet ski floats on the landward side when the depth is only 2.5 foot, and I let him know that we would only allow that if the depth meets 3 feet, and that is clearly stated. We had a clarification on the datum, the NAVD 88. There was a typo in there that he thought was confusing, so I fixed that to make sure we're all using NAVD 88 unless otherwise noted. And he was making sure to clarify the new building structures in the V zone. We would mostly be dealing with expansion of footprint, and that the commission wouldn't be concerned with expansions, adding another level or a second story or a dormer. And I let him know that the commission was always only mostly concerned about the footprint expansion, but we didn't think that we need to change that in the regulations. And lastly, he was wondering if we could make a regulation to clarify the expected buffer zone when you're implementing a bulkhead, but we don't want to put a cookie cutter response out there because each site is different, and we would take them on a case-by-case basis. And he was happy with those responses.
Okay. And I finally have one last thing. Part 6, let's see, what are we, 6.01, 3 and 4. It's buffer zone, so we're talking about prohibited within resource areas listed under the first section of this part, within 35 and 50-foot buffers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have, following are prohibited, fertilizers and pesticides. And pesticides we use unless part of an approved invasive species removal program. I'm trying to decide whether or not, I don't know that we have the authority to prohibit the use of fertilizers or pesticides, and certainly not pesticides, because the Pesticide Control Board has the ultimate say over as to what pesticides can be used and how they can be used.
Okay, I do know that the town of Orleans just did pass a fertilizer ban.
I'm sorry, who?
The town of Orleans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would imagine, and a lot of towns do have the fertilizer in there. But if you're uncomfortable with it, we can remove it for further.
My only question with this sort of stuff is fertilizers, how do we
Would be very difficult.
how do we enforce it?
Other than putting it in the performance standards.
You can sit there and watch somebody do something, which is kind of difficult.
We also had it in our original. This was the one that it deleted it and moved the section to the end because
Yeah,
it
I
made
know,
no
and I didn't
sense.
catch it, but I'm sorry.
Have that in there already. But if we don't think that is, I can make sure with town council.
So, but it, I'm sorry?
Landscapers, pick them up.
In literature going out to the landscapers when,
Yeah, and there are some towns that require, there's a county program that is done through Cooperative Extension that it's like a 3-hour certification course for landscapers to apply the proper way to apply fertilizers within wetlands jurisdictions.
The Vineyard also has something like that.
Yeah, I think that Barnstable has it, I think Orleans has it.
Nantucket.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are a couple things, so I'm a little hesitant to say you can't do anything because I just don't see how we enforce it. That's my only issue
That's
with
the
that.
issue.
And then pesticides, I'm a little bit more hesitant, because again, I mean, it's Pesticide Control Board that oversees pesticide use in Massachusetts. And I understand, and maybe we can just put something in here that says, you know, we encourage you to not use fertilizers and/or pesticides, you know, within these areas.
I think that we have the authority to limit fertilizers due to their negative impact to the nutrient loading in our water bodies
I'm just saying, how do we enforce it?
with difficulty.
That's
But
my concern.
We have that problem with a lot of things.
A lot of things that happen that we,
So,
the only
I
way-
just
the
threw
reason
that-
we find out is someone tells us.
But clearly, it seems like if the board is willing to, wants to keep it, and that's fine with me. I had to bring it up, so.
Yeah, I have one of those too. I have one of those, have
You
to
have
bring
one
it
of
up.
those things too, so.
So what does the commission think about that? Should we keep those or take them out?
I'd like to keep it.
I'd like to keep it.
I would too.
My only question about it, as far as fertilizers are concerned, I mean, nowadays, there's all kinds of fertilizers. Do you lump them all together? You can put down chemical fertilizers, there's organic fertilizers. Are they all as detrimental as?
They're all nutrients in the system. Even if we allow organic fertilizers, they can be in concentrations that are just as dangerous or if more so than the non-organic ones. So as it's written, they're all lumped in.
That's true.
Okay, well, I mean, clearly, the majority of the board is looking toward, Jack.
Wondering, I mean, I don't understand how this relates to the other board you mentioned that has authority for this. The,
The pesticide control.
yeah. What's is there coordination, overlap? I don't quite understand.
No, well, Pesticide Control Board oversees all pesticide use within Massachusetts. So they're the ones who certify the applicators, and they certify the specialists and that sort of thing.
Who enforces that in the town, though?
Nobody, it's not something that's enforced in the town. It's a state
I see.
state
Okay.
regulator,
So a licensed
regulatory board.
applicator has to,
And so they're the ones who make up the exams and do the exams and all that sort of thing. And they
Okay,
are the
thanks.
ones based on the labels of what the pesticides say.
sure.
Okay. So,
Need to ask town council specifically about the pesticide.
you can ask them. Yeah, I think
mean,
it
'cause
would
we
be at
can-
least worth getting their opinion on it, since they would be the ones who are going to have to defend it.
Defend it. Yeah.
And then I guess, again, the majority of the board wants to keep the fertilizers. so-
Fertilizers to keep, yeah.
And so that's mine. Rick?
Rick?
Could we put limited use? But that's even more vague.
Yeah, it's just, it's a very difficult,
It is, yeah.
Yeah, would be very difficult.
But maybe it would still stop some people from doing it
Yeah.
by having it in there.
Some people follow the rules as they're
Right.
written.
Some people
Not a
say, "Oh,
lot.
look, we're not supposed to do that, let's not."
3.01, dock regulations. This is a very difficult one, but I think it warrants some discussion. We have very specific limitations on length and width of our docks. It is my opinion that the personal watercraft lifts circumvent that limitation because it's a structure that is attached to the dock and arbitrarily increases the width of the dock by a significant amount. So, it's certainly, if you look at it in terms of float, it goes outside of the float limitations as well. So I'm not sure how we would manage this, but it seems to me it's worth some discussion because it is, I guess it's going outside the spirit of our regulations.
So
It counts,
boat
right?
lifts.
Don't we have don't they count as the square footage of the float, right?
Yeah.
You have that in the regulation, right?
Not what I've seen.
I thought we had it.
It says it in 15, though.
Yeah, 15, page 24.
Yeah, jet ski floats shall be included within the 200 square foot float limit. Jet ski floats shall
When
not
they're
be attached.
floats, but I'm
Float,
talking about a
Jet
lift.
ski lift is what he's talking about.
It's the lifts that we,
Lift.
Same thing with boat lifts then. You should not just say jet ski lifts, but it should be boat lifts as well then.
in some ways, it's a different animal because the personal watercraft lifts have been attached to the edge of the dock, not the floats.
Yeah,
Where
the
boat
dock.
lifts are essentially over the water. But these are attached, they're bolted right to the pilings.
Yeah.
So it's adding a number of feet to the width of our dock.
So you think they should be included as if they were floats in the float
That's what
limit?
I think, yeah.
So they should be included within the 200-foot, like number
Why
15.
would you just, why can't we just add that caveat, then jet ski lifts?
Are counted as part of the dock
Boat
structure.
slash
It doesn't say
lift.
lifts, it says floats.
Yeah, but see, jet ski
Two
floats
different
and
things.
lifts. Why can't we just say jet ski floats and lifts shall be included within the 200 square foot limit?
Yeah.
But you're
That-
talking about boat lifts, too.
No, I was primarily focused on the personal watercraft lifts.
Okay.
I think if you just add floats and lifts to 15,
Yes.
Okay.
And I think we should use the personal watercraft because jet ski is
Okay.
specific to a type of.
You're right.
A brand.
Right.
A brand,
Right.
and I've heard in other communities, they've run up against a problem because,
Like the removable device.
Yeah, exactly.
and people say,
That's
especially
great.
some of these are very large, they like to.
Yeah, great point, Pat.
All right, so personal watercraft, including jet ski floats and lifts. Okay, and so what about boat lifts then? Do you want to have a maximum dimension for boat lifts? Because we just allow boat lifts on the edge of docks as they are, but there is a depth requirement.
Yeah, I don't have enough technical knowledge of how the big boat lifts work.
Well, I got a thought for you. On our regulations as they stand, the docks go out, and some of the ones have Ts on the end that we're asking them to take the T off. If they put a boat lift there, that classifies really as a T that they're putting on the end.
Because we have a forfeit with maximum.
Right.
Should we,
Just to
say
throw-
that again?
The docks that we have now, when we have new docks coming, where docks coming before us to get redone, we want them to conform to our regulations and have go straight and take the T off the end, because we have a lot of docks that have a T on it.
Right.
But if they go straight and then put a boat lift there, that counteracts the T, because that boat lift
It's
will
wide.
be a T at the end.
But so is a float. You could argue that the float is a T as well.
Well, the float is a float, and this, we're talking about docks, the docks going straight out.
See, I think you should include the area of a boat lift as a float. Just count it as a float, because, I mean, that's what you're essentially
Yep.
substituting
Replacing.
for, right?
Agreed.
And we can't really, I mean, they're supposed to, I mean, I think the whole point behind the boat lift is to keep the boat above the water, well above the water, so we're supposed to be reducing shading, but I guess there's nothing saying, well, yeah, I guess you can't.
If it's well above the water, then it's a dock.
No, I
Just
think,
to throw
I
that
agree with
Yeah,
what
but
I was
I
saying.
think we need to.
we can just
there's
set
a
the
I
200 square
I think we need
foot
to be able to,
boat lift limit then. We would have to specify, if it's not a float, it's a boat lift. We can just specify there is a 200 square foot maximum area for boat lifts.
Or float.
I was just saying,
Oh,
why
well,
would
that's a
you
pretty
include that
big
as part of
boat
the
lift.
floats?
That's a big boat lift, 20.
In addition, okay, so you don't want there to be a boat lift of 200 square feet and then also floats? That's what,
200 square feet of float and 200 square feet of boat, no, I think the boat, am I?
Saying the boat lift should be part of
The
the
boat lift
200
should be
feet.
part of the 200 square.
that's, yes,
square feet.
that's very easy to do.
Yes?
Yes, we
I mean,
could do
doesn't
that.
that make more sense that
sense to
way, I
me.
think?
So are you saying that the jet ski lift would be eliminated and everything would be categorized under the boat lift?
No, we would have,
Two different things.
yeah, two different,
But somebody could make the argument that a jet ski is a boat. And therefore, it shouldn't be treated in any different way than another kind of boat on a lift.
I think what we're saying is that that they would come under the same
They're
regulation.
the same.
Same.
Yeah, and the other question I have, and that's fine, the other question I have has to do with, what are the regulations concerning boat size on a dock?
There are none.
There aren't any.
Have any?
None.
Therefore, is somebody gonna say, well, listen, this is just like pulling a boat up against the dock, the only thing we're doing is lifting it out of the water because we're interested in not shading underneath like the boat would do if it was pulled up against the dock. I mean, it seems to me there's some difficulties with all of these kind of distinctions that we're trying to make.
There is.
You're correct, Paul. Well,
Don't let me get
I'm in
into the
agreement with the
difference
chairman.
between a rowboat, a dinghy, and a launch.
I don't know.
Waterways had about 3 meetings
I'm
trying
just
to
saying
find the
that,
difference
folks
between
are gonna
these.
come and say, listen, I have a jet ski and it's a boat, it's my boat, I don't have a big boat. And now you're telling me the guy next door has a boat up against his dock, and I can't put a lift which would be like where I pull up my jet ski and I just lift it out of the water? I mean, I just think it's,
We didn't say you couldn't. We're saying that the maximum space is 200 square feet of the whole
Yeah,
project.
but you don't say that for the boat. You don't say the maximum size of the boat is X.
But we're including the mechanism to lift it out, and that's what we're talking
You're
about.
concerned with the mechanism.
Correct.
But Paul is saying, is there no benefit to have the boat up above the water instead of in the water?
But we do cover, the issue there with the boat is that we do require that they stay 3 feet off the bottom.
Yeah.
Right?
Same with the boat lift.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just guess, I guess I'm concerned that I just don't want this to be seen as like an
Arbitrary?
anti-jet ski decision, but it's a decision that's made, in fairness for all folks in terms of their vessels out there, their.
So to give you some comfort with that, my motivation was that we're getting the lift mechanism and the floats.
Yeah.
So we're going outside of our 200 square foot limitation.
Yeah.
Kind of in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
That was my whole
Yeah,
motivation.
no, I understand that, and I think it's well taken, but, because I think people have figured out that that's what they can do. But I just wonder how many different kinds of objections we're gonna run into in the future regarding this being kind of arbitrary or whatever. I personally
It's only
think that
applying
people,
to
if they don't have room on their dock,
Now, right?
should take the boat out and put it in a driveway until the next time they
modified.
want to use it, But,
Yeah, but see, this is only going to apply to new docks or significantly reconstructed.
Modified,
altered,
yeah.
That's a very good point.
So that's going to be a,
Small
we
few.
just, and we just don't, we don't have that many dock-free, we don't have that the potential for that many more new docks at this point. so.
Probably about 6.
See, the next one, though, on number 16, the lifts shall have no decking, covers, walls, or roofs. I think from experience, we found that really is a way to expand upon your approved pier. Because it just really is like another platform out
Yeah.
there, That, to me, is easier to defend than some of these other things.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Gotta take
But it gets-
Zoom.
Yeah.
You can't?
Okay, is anybody else,
Did we take Zoom
you need to
comment?
move to, do you want to vote as a commission on this particular section, or you're,
Yeah, I think so. We can add that to the regulation.
well, I think
we do
the
all of them.
majority is saying yes, right?
Okay, yeah.
Could we hear the motion, though? What would the motion be?
So I would be changing any references to jet skis to personal watercraft and putting in parentheses, including jet skis, and adding lifts to jet ski floats and lifts will be included in the 200 square foot limit,
Correct.
and I would be including boat lifts in the 200 square foot limit.
Good. So moved.
Rick, you moving it?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Is there anybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstaining, and
Everyone's,
one,
Aye, yeah.
you said yes?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so
We'll
we're
see what happens.
unanimous with one
6-0
extension.
We'll
with
change
one
that then.
abstention. I can say that.
Okay, so
Any
anything
other
else?
comments, questions?
Anybody else? Jack?
Is there a way of either setting up a diagram or a sequence of actions that would show the origin of these different changes, laws? I'm probably going to be pushing on this kind of thing. I don't know if, I'm obviously way behind the curve on the history of these things, but if they're, so that the public would be able to say, okay, here's where we are, here's where we're ending up. And you probably, the guys are probably going to give me the duty of doing it, but
I mean, that's the purpose, I think, of the marked up copy, to show all our changes. I don't know, apart from that, from having the old versions available to the public in addition to this.
well, that's extremely important, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm talking if there's a way of diagramming where the laws and where the, sets of actions come, or where their origin is and why we're making changes and where it ends up. It's hard to describe with this kind of document, I know.
Well, I think that's what we're
Not
gonna do with
sure.
the, because I mean, our bylaw hasn't changed since 1987.
Yeah.
Our regulations have changed very little.
So if you look at the one that Brittany has up there, you have the old language and the new language.
I think he's talking about how they ultimately came about that we made this decision.
We did.
I mean, there's
Case
minutes.
in point, there was one guy who put a jet ski lift in, and he put a platform on it. And we said, no platform, and he goes, what do you mean, no platform? So it's,
Yeah, but,
it's all these things that come up as people's imaginations.
but aren't there, well, each one of these regulations have different laws, state, federal, whatever,
Yep.
as origins. And I know it's a complex issue. But if there's a way of really making a flow diagram of where these things come from, because I think that's where I hear
Okay.
a lot of public getting confused of why we think these are simple versus, and maybe small changes, who's using them versus the public versus a professional and that kind of thing. I hear that kind of confusion coming across this. And I'm not sure of the resolution.
At this time, I don't think I could produce more than this document.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
It
I
is-
don't know if,
I don't think there's enough
I mean,
resources or time.
Well, yeah, no, that's probably the bottom line of what I'm asking for. Small town,
I mean, the reality is, I mean, I've been on this board for 20, more than that, 24 years. Yeah. And I don't think I'd be able to come up with a
Yeah.
history at this point.
Look at the part she has
I've
as
lived
general
through-
purpose.
I've lived through an awful lot of it, but
well, if you don't mind, I have actually looked in for other towns and things and there aren't any.
Yeah.
There's only a couple of towns that have any kind of flow charts or anything for these things. So if you don't mind that I sort of pursue that to see if I can.
Great.
Good luck.
That would be great.
Good luck.
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Brittany does
have
need
lawn
some
to mow
help
or
in the
something?
office while you're there.
Need an assistant.
Yeah, I'll mow my lawn while I'm doing it.
I think we still have the Zoom.
Yes, I would like
Folks.
to move this now, but I think we need to,
Can we move it pending Brittany's changes.
Yeah, I think at this point, it would be better for us to move that we continue this
Probably.
with, and then have our revisions, and then come back to it. I think most of these are pretty straightforward, easy things,
They're
right?
mostly very minor. I have them all here, and there'll be another opportunity at our next meeting if I mess any of them
7th?
up.
Yeah, I mean, you can do the 7th?
Yeah.
Okay, and then
Um,
hopefully we'll be able to still go ahead and make the motion then to approve, make them effective January 1st,
Yes.
okay?
Did you take questions from Zoom?
I thought I did. Anybody on Zoom has any questions on the regulations?
You did ask.
I think I did it before, right?
Oh, I
Okay.
missed it. No hands.
Last time in the audience, I gave Zoom second chance, but not. Would somebody like to make a motion then to continue this for the revisions, and then we'll readdress, or we'll reassess the revisions at the December 7th meeting? So we're looking for continuance to December 7th.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Okay.
So the public comment on December 7th is only open to the revisions, or is open to everything?
Only for the revisions.
Only for the revisions. I'll make another color.
Okay. All right, moving on to other business then, we have an approval of meeting minutes for November 2nd, 2023.
I move to approve them.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wait a
Opposed?
minute, Pat, were you here? No. You can't vote. Yeah, Jack can't
Oh,
vote.
Can't vote.
and seems how you wrote the minutes, you can't make the first motion, so I move that we accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
Just to really
Ian
screw you
Rec.
up, how's that?
We have 4 people. One, two,
Five.
We've got
Five people can
five
vote.
people.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
And
Two
two abstentions, yeah.
abstentions.
Right.
All right, so any other business not
Yeah, I
reasonably anticipated?
I'll do it very quickly. Last time I talked about the wastewater group and what's going on, and I just thought I'd bring you all up to date quickly. The selectmen were lucky enough, or some selectmen were lucky enough to pigeonhole the governor when she was here and talk to her about the issue, that here we are wanting to put in, the state wants us to move quickly, and then the state stops us from moving quickly. So they wrote a very nice letter, the Board of Selectmen, that should help. We put in an NOI to move ahead on what's on the east of Parker River, the 2 contracts. The risk you take is by starting that is, we're waiting still for the permit to build the wastewater treatment plant. But I think the town is willing to take the risk that it will get approved because the state wants us to move ahead. So hopefully, things will move ahead, and I'll know better in December.
Yes, you will.
I think I'll be there in December. Yeah, I'll be in there in December. I won't be there to report back till January, though.
Sounds better.
And I have one from the open space. The draft has been conditionally approved by the Division of Conservation Services, and they were able to submit and receive a park grant for the River Park Walk.
That's great news.
So they're still working on it, still awaiting formal announcement from the governor's office, but we'll get the supporting letters from everybody we need.
Wow, great.
That'll be good.
I have 2 quick ones. The CPC committee voted in favor of our invasive species management project request. So that'll move to town meeting for official approval. We did ask for $37,000, so hopefully we'll get that.
How much?
37.
Thank you.
And there is a job opening in the conservation office. If anyone knows someone who might be interested in working at Town Hall in the conservation division, please encourage them to apply online. And that is all.
CPC also voted in favor of the Friends of Bass River project to study improving water quality at the Crowell Pond at the mouth of Bass River.
Run Pond.
Uh,
Run/Crowell Pond.
Crowell Pond is stinky
That's
pond.
like Boner's Beach and
Right, exactly.
West Dennis Beach.
Okay.
All right,
Western
we done?
Beach.
Anything else?
The vote to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I do.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Who made the motion? Jack? And who seconded it?
Well, it's either Paul or me.
I'll give it to Paul.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimous. We stand adjourned at 6:50.
6:50.